Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of the Watchlist Podcast. My name is Jacob Boyer. I'm joined today by Emi Padula. Did I get the last name right?
You did, actually. Most people try and pronounce it like Padula.
Padula.
I don't know why.
I'm glad. I have a good track record with last names so far. I'm proud of myself on that. So, Emi is also a Kutztown grad, like many of the other guests we've had on the show so far, in the same year as me. We've worked together on a few different projects, whether that be comedy sketches for our practicum class or a short film that I made senior year. How have you been?
I've been well. Last time you saw me, we were in school, and we worked together indirectly and directly, and then we all went off to our internships. I went with Intrinsic, a lot of script writing stuff, which was very, very fun, but unfortunately, I'm just working at a Dunkin' and watching a bunch of movies.
There's no problem with that. I mean, you could just look at that as like a practice to like really hone your craft.
Life experience. No, it is really interesting because like I do work with Indian and Egyptian people, so I've learned about a whole different culture. If you like Mexican food but you want it vegetarian, go with Indian food. Yeah. Hands down, the best shit. Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge fan of it, but I will admit there are some very tasty Indian dishes out there.
Quite quality.
So, you mentioned script writing, mm-hmm. and that's one thing I've noticed that, especially in the practicum class, because we didn't really talk much before that, but
no.
You've written and produced some pretty funny comedy sketches from what I've seen. I just going off my list, we got Mumblecuts, Ghouls Get Gone, Don't Be That Guy. Did you have anything to do with the Nigerian Prince sketch we did?
No, that was actually all Maddie. I had nothing to do with that. I did help rein him in a few times because I didn't help with the B-movie part. I don't know where the fuck he came up with that. I don't know what his obsession was. But yeah, Mumblecuts, that was actually a really fun time. Mm-hmm. The first time that I actually worked together with a bunch of those people was during Mumblecore, and that's when I really feel like I got my footing, besides me just being a very loud personality and just talking shit. But I think that's when people were like, oh, yeah, she can kind of write, and she's pretty funny, too.
Definitely, yeah. I really enjoyed this, especially Ghouls Get Gone with that comedy class. I really liked that one. That was
nuts. That was
what else can you say?
It was it was made in one night. It was written, directed, we shot it all in one night. We had to calm Eric down, walk him off the ledge a few times. We got his former girlfriend, we got her to agree to be the ghost, which was in and of itself. She was like, I want to be on camera. We're like, good, you don't have to be.
You have a sheet over your head.
Yeah, we're like, you're fine. And Barry was a lot of fun. He really was the glue. He kept us all sane. Mm-hmm. And then Bart, he was just such an excellent actor. I'm glad so many people have worked with him.
Barry and Bart are the two go-to people I found in our year, especially. Anytime you want to really make something the best that it possibly can be, you add Barry and Bart.
They're reliable, and they knew what they're doing, and Barry's just a saint, and Bart's so funny. Just the two of them, they're just great to work with. It was a lot of fun, mm-hmm. but very stressful and very silly. And I'm glad it really came together, because we were really worried that just because it was so rushed and so last minute, sometimes that can turn out a lot worse than you think it does.
Right.
You're oh, this looks great at the time, and then you're sitting there editing it, and you're
mm-hmm.
wow, I forgot, how did he get into this room? Or
yeah.
You see the magical floating coffee cup, or something stupid like that. But
mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that
consistent.
I find that in a lot of almost anything that you do, no matter how well you've planned it out, and how much you've paid attention to consistency, whether that be in the way things are blocked out, or the way or where certain characters are. I think that it's kind of inherent that we all hate our own work at one point or another, and then we put it out and people are like, oh, it's not that bad, and then we get our egos built back up, and then the cycle just keeps on
the
repeating.
Trope of being an artist, just
exactly.
Self-loathing but still produce. That's the struggle, is self-loathing and keeping producing stuff, especially now that we're all out of college, because some of us mm-hmm. do struggle with either, well, even you, you're in a creative field, but that still takes time away from your personal projects. Thankfully
exactly.
You still have time to do stuff like this, and
mm-hmm.
I'm grateful to do something creative also and
mm-hmm.
get out of the house.
Well, thank you for coming on to help me make something creative. not the first time. You did help me with the box, and that was a really cool. You stepped up at basically the last minute. The actress, I won't get too much into it, but for one reason or another, the actress who was originally going to do it backed out. I think the day of, or might have been the day before, and I just kind of put out this last ditch thing where I was like, oh, if anyone can sacrifice an afternoon, please. I'm kind of desperate here, and you really stepped up and helped me out. So
no, it's no problem.
Belated thank you for that.
No, I've always wanted. I regret not working with a lot of people I was there, because there were a lot of people I wanted to work with. I did want to work with you more. There's another boy too. Were you in my Johnston scriptwriting class?
No, I wasn't.
No, what was his name? His name was Zach or something.
Zach Esposito?
Yeah, he was a really good writer, I remember. I remember he had some really good, he had a really good PSA. That's, the weirdest thing to remember. But, he really did. He had a really good PSA, I remember, because, Johnson just kept talking about it, and, he had these really good visuals, because he, I knew it was going to be good, because I remember he said something about, there's, Fairly Odd Parents on the TV, and I was like, that boy pays attention to detail, and he likes cartoons, so I'm like, he knows his shit.
Yeah, I think he's also he's been doing a lot of music stuff lately with
really?
A band. I think because I follow some of the people who are still in schools Instagram, and the people who run Mic Check. For those who don't know, that was the music featured student show that we not we, but we as a school helped make. Yeah. And I think that he was on. I haven't listened to any of the music, but I remember him being oh, good to be back, and sharing stuff like that.
Oh, so. A reunion, he came back after graduation.
Yeah, he came back
cool.
to be on Mic Check. Yeah.
I wonder who's doing that now.
I think actually it might be. I had her on earlier, Heather Hamilton. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
I know her. I've never spoken to her, but I know exactly who you're talking. I recognize her because she was one of those younger. She was one of the younger. I don't think she's that much younger than us, is she? Probably.
No, she's a junior now, so she would have been.
She would have been a freshman
when we graduated.
So she was little then, yeah. I'm not exaggerating.
Okay, but yeah, no, I don't know if she's doing it. I remember someone shared something because I think she does NBS.
Yeah, I always get the email.
I don't know. It's someone at Kutztown shared
She's
something.
the new Liz.
And yeah. That's so. Point being, there's so many guesses. You think it was Zach, and I think that he was on Mic Check at one point. Yeah,
now that you said his name, I know it was him that was writing.
Okay. Right, no, but yeah, it's point being, I guess it's great that even after graduation, there's still this collaborative energy floating around.
So cool. I love that.
Yeah. So you mentioned you did your internship with Intrinsic Value Films for script writing, which you just said before we started recording. They're famous for that Trick or Treat, and which is a fantastic Halloween movie. Killer. If you haven't seen that, by the way.
Yeah, those are their two big ones I saw on their website. He was really fun, Joe Lagara. He was super great. He was very animated over the phone. He always wanted us to have questions. He was very excited to talk. He even indulged my weird drag obsession because I mentioned it, and he's like, oh yeah, he's like, I have a few scripts that are drag related. He totally indulged and was really willing to teach and hear what we have to say and also discuss, and he was very into talking the talk, getting slick language wise with the industry and stuff like that. I didn't have a lot of good questions about that. I was mostly just how do I make it?
Right.
I was please just where do I go from here? But it was a lot of fun. They also have an LA base, and then they took on 2 of us at a time, so it was very intimate. It was a lot of because we did just did conference calls because it wasn't in person. He's based in New York, and he just sends it out to us, but he did spend a lot of time talking to us on the phone, and he even called before the internship began and explained the process and explained the treatment that he was going over. He's like, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, don't put I statements and stuff like that. So it's just very basic, but it was a lot of fun. And
so what did you kind of do? Was it just a lot of reading what people would bring in and editing it and giving notes to him, or? Yeah,
a lot of it was just sounds just like what you think it would be. You get a script. We got every Monday we got it, and then it was due Friday. So we had maybe 4 days to do it, and basically you just kind of read through the script. You established, like, he was very into, like, log lines. He thinks that's, like, the strongest point, and he recommended a book called How to Save the Cat, Save the Cat.
I haven't read it. It's literally on my shelf right
No,
now. But
I haven't.
From what I hear, it's a great book on screenwriting.
It is. I've read, like, half of it so far, and it's a great book on screenwriting because, like, it teaches you the realities of it, like, sort of thing. Like, if you want to write a blockbuster movie, like, you want to sell scripts, that's the guy, like, you talk to. Like, he's, like, you have to have a great log line, and he's, like, it has to be sellable. Like, I remember, what was one of the big... He mentioned this... Oh, Legally Blonde. He thought Legally Blonde was one of the best, like, film titles ever. Like, he thinks title is very important because they could have gone, like, a lot of stupid ways. Like, they could have been, like, Barbie Goes to Harvard, or, like, it could have been very stereotypical. So it's very based on, like, his first impressions matter.
Right.
And that log line, that needs to sum up. Like, you can't just be like, well, it's about this guy and he does this thing. It has to be like, no, like, military veteran takes out robot army to save daughter.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, sum it up as quick as you can, which is important in script writing. Because it's like, say it, don't tell, like, show us, don't tell us, and say it as small as possible.
Yeah. That's what we had did you have Cliff Neal for anything when he was there? Or
yeah, I had. Neil's a homeboy.
Did he do the thing with you when we had that project where you had to pitch, like, you had to pitch your final project as if it were like a show or whatever, and he would do that, like, New York persona? Like, did he do that with you?
The game show persona, or
like the, hey, so give me your log line, okay?
No,
yeah, like, he was really, like, abrasive. It was so much fun. But he said this one thing that always stuck. No, he said this one thing that always stuck with me about where he's like, in that persona, he goes, if you don't go binga banga boomo with your log line, the guy will tell you bye bye. And it was like, Neil was he's such a great guy. I still talk to him from time to time, and he was one of the best professors I ever had. That whole department was full of great professors. Looking back on it, I guess getting a little bit more broad in like the grand scheme of, like, movies. I know you said that script writing is something that you're really fond of, or not, like, that's kind of in line with what you would ideally want to do as a career. Yeah. So do you have any script writers that you look up to as, like, oh man, that's, like, the golden standard of what I want to aspire to be, or any personal favorites you might have? Or
I have a lot that I enjoy. I really enjoy John Carpenter, and I really enjoy I watched a documentary about, like, Halloween, how, like, it first came about, and I admired that he was really honest about how much his girlfriend helped him through with it at the time, because I thought that was one of the most impressive things about Halloween, was just, like, like, how natural it was. Because sometimes you see, like, maybe it's because I'm a woman also, but, like, I remember watching, like, trying to get into American Horror Story. So I watched the first season, and there's that scene where, like, Violet's at school, and just the dialogue between those two girls, I was like, they've never talked to a woman before. I was like, I'm like, they were born from an egg. They've never had contact with anybody. Like, sometimes it turns out so cringy like that. Right. And, like, for someone to take care and to take direction and sort of, like, mold this universe where there's not really a lot of answers. Like, there's no real, like, direction. Like, it's sort of just babysitter. Then it just sort of, like, gets uncomfortable. There, yeah, like, it gets uncomfortable, and this, like, tension's building, and before you know it, people are dropping like flies. And you're like, why is this happening? And unfortunately, there's a bunch of other movies to explain. Right. There's, like, 7 other Halloween films to explain why it's happening. But it doesn't capture that magic of when, like, you're helpless and, like, you're just sort of like a passenger and just watching this unfold in front of you, where you can't help, or, like, like, the police don't help even. Like, it's established in that universe that, like, police can't help, big guys can't help, like, a gun can't help. Like, what is this unholy black magic?
I don't remember if I ever told you, I actually got the chance to meet John Carpenter I want to say back over the summer kind of a tangent, but I did ask him not some like specific like screenwriting questions, but one of we can I guess kind of tie this into the writing a little bit, but my favorite movie of his, and definitely my top 5 of all time, is The Thing.
Yes,
I love that movie so much from so many different aspects, but the writing especially in that movie is great, and how, namely like the ending, because they had like, I don't know if you know this, but they had like 5 or 6 different endings they were going to go with. And then even beyond that, the ending that they did go with, there were like 4 or 5 different ways that they were going to either add or subtract to the ending that they had. Like there was one, or spoilers if you haven't seen The Thing, you definitely should see The Thing, but they were going to do one where McCready just sort of like passes out in the snow and then roll credits. There was going to be one where you find out one of them is an alien and the other one gets torched. There's going to be one where it's like the next morning and a dog runs away from the wreckage onto like whatever the next movie would be. But I think the ending that they settled on is so perfect and like such a great way to end a horror movie like that. And I asked him specifically, I had this chance where he was doing photo ops in front of a replica of the car from Christine. And I got up to him, and after the picture I said really quick, I was like, man, the ending of The Thing is so ambiguous. Do you even know what happened at the end? And he laughed, and he did this like really sly smile, and he was like, I do know what happened, and I'm not going to tell you. And he waved me on my way, and it was so, it was such a great experience. But yeah, he's a class act. Like I think that any horror writer should definitely look at him as an inspiration.
Yeah, especially like American horror writing. I feel like he really capitalized on like that feel, because like there's an expectation I have with American horror, and like I guess over the years it has changed, because like in the 70s it was like slasher films, like that's what we thought of when we thought of horror, and like slowly it's kind of like evolved to like more so ghost stories is the theme now. I don't know really why.
Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's what I kind of blame that on.
Because we did have like a torture porn phase with like the whole like Saw thing, and then there's like a few other movies that kind of were like, who's gonna like Hostel. Yeah, that wasn't. Yeah, that was more towards the end. It was torture porn, but there's a cool point where I have a lot of respect for Eli Roth, because he also looks up to Takashi Miike.
Yeah,
and Takashi Miike has like a 2-second cameo, cameo in Hostel, and I look forward to it every time.
Yeah, he's both of those are, well, Takashi Miike especially, he's really great. Eli Roth, I'm kind of lukewarm with from time to time.
He's a better producer.
Yeah. He the past few, I think he produced one movie that I really enjoyed that didn't really get a lot of exposure.
Clown?
Yeah, Clown.
I love Clown. Okay.
It's such a guilty pleasure. Like, it's not a perfect movie by any means, but it's perfect in like what it's trying to do.
I think,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, like that's what I mean. I think Eli Roth really understands, like, I think he has a very good eye for American horror, because I think like Cabin Fever, like, yeah, it was stupid. Like really fucking stupid, but there, like, you remember her shaving her legs.
Yeah.
You remember the kid being like fucking pancakes. That's
one of the best like what the fuck moments, to just randomly send someone and be like, what genre is this movie? What genre do you think this is?
That's what it was kind of playing around there, and I like that little like play, because it kind of brought us back to like that Sam Raimi,
right.
And like Bruce Campbell. Like, I think horror does need, like, especially American horror, you need a little like chuckle.
Yeah.
You need a little like pokey to like kind of lighten their mood, because at the end of the day we do want to like the villain,
right,
as much as we say we don't want to.
I think that is like a huge often overlooked thing, is that you not necessarily making the villain like understandable, but like identifiable in some way. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if that's a bad way of wording it, but I think that like,
no, I think identify, because you could be like, I know that person, I know why they're angry, like, yeah, my brother was a real hothead like that, or he was a real bitch like that, you know what I mean? Like, kind of revenge. I don't know, we all kind of know someone that's a little darker on the inside,
right,
or maybe that's a little off, or maybe that's us.
It's like, again, going back to John Carpenter, he said like the two the only two scary story, like there's the two archetypes to any scary story, is that the evil is out there and it's the unknown, or it's the evil in your heart. And I think that that's kind of very like when you really boil it down, that is kind of true of a lot of horror movies. More so these days, the evil being like an external force. But I think one thing that he did very well is kind of playing, even though like when you think of his movies, you got like Christine, Halloween, The Thing. These are all movies, right? Yeah, it's all. There are the evil in that movie is to a pretty major an extent an external force, but there's a lot in those movies where it's like about the evil in your heart, about like trying to figure out like, well, at first trying to figure out like why is Mike Myers so evil, or in the case of The Thing, could this innocent person on the outside be something terrible on the inside?
Yeah.
And I think he weaves those threads so wonderfully.
That thread of doubt.
Yeah.
And it's just like making us doubt what's going to happen next, which is very like understated anymore. Mm-hmm. It's not very like people. They throw things at the wall, and then you're just kind of like, but why was that important? It's kind of like how people make fun of, like, M. Night Shyamalan now. It's like, he throws a twist in, and it's like, why was the twist there, though? Or, like, why was the loose end, like, tied up? Like, you already had the story. You had the meat, and then you throw on this, like, little tail.
A little extra garnish. That need to be
that I can't eat.
Yeah, good point. So, I kind of cut you off. So, John Carpenter is a big influence, or, like, a gold standard for you. Is there any other screenwriters you really admire?
I really do like Lars von Trier also, and then I also like, I can't say his name, but that Greek man who has done Killing of a Sacred Deer, Lobster.
Yorgos Lanthimos.
I think he is brilliant. I think he had like this Grecian tragedy sense about him that I really like. I don't like, especially Killing of a Sacred Deer. That movie really stuck with me, and I thought it was really, I don't want to say fun. It was really uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's very
good at that. In all of his movies,
it was a little clunky.
Something that's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was a little clunky at parts, but like that sense of just being like, just the situation, like, is just a very uncomfortable thought. Like, it's not like a test where there's a right answer. It's like no matter what, it's sort of like ambiguous and sort of blood on your hands.
Right. Especially in that movie, but a lot of, like I said, every movie he's done so far has been, like, really, whether, like, uncomfortable to sit through or, like, uncomfortable to, like it's either kind of a weird situation where, in, like, the case of The Lobster, it's, like, putting you in this like really uncomfortable scenario and like really unnerving you, but maybe in the case of The Favorite being like, oh wow, this is really awkward for those characters up there. So that's kind of like a theme like in all his movies. He's I think one of the best writer directors working today.
Yeah,
I'm
like
really
honestly,
excited to see what he does next.
And like just the way he like, it's not even like there are like he doesn't play on tropes. Like it's not like there's like the nagging husband and like the pretty wife. It's like these very people-centric stories. There's not a lot of external force to them, and it's a lot of like nuclear like love, like these nuclear moments in our lives where we're supposed to connect with other people, and he kind of like puts up this like weird like anxious wall of like, is it worth it though? Is it like worth it to have these connections and these things? And like that's a true level of horror that I don't think we've seen, especially from that side of the world. Yeah. He's I have nothing but praise for the guy. It's even ignoring the whole horror aspect, like everything he's done is like so unique in its own weird way, even movie to movie. Like you said, it does have this sort of like theme connecting all three of them, but they're different.
Right.
They're very different visually.
Yeah.
There's a very different feel. Even like I think the sound, like direct. He's very versatile. He's not afraid to like change from even that he's only had like a few movies.
I think that three, like The Lobster, Killing a Sacred Deer, and
yeah,
the
but
Favorite.
His style, like his aesthetic, his composition, like it's all been very different. He's shown us very different sides of himself and how to tell a story. Yeah,
he's fantastic. So I guess kind of going on, we talked about favorite scriptwriters and favorite people kind of working in that realm, but let's get very, very broad. What is your favorite movie overall? Your go-to? Or any number of them, like if you don't have an overall favorite.
I have a few movies I like to go to. I do like to watch a really, really deep guilty pleasure for me is like Chud.
Okay.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. It's just very fun. It's very B-movie. It's like exactly what I want. Like I do like a good monster movie. Like I like Godzilla. I like stupid things like that. So I look at a good monster movie. What else do I did really enjoy Green Room. I thought that was very really dynamic. It was a lot of, I like the way they just set up the whole situation. It seemed very like, because at first the movie seems like kind of nonsensical, like it seems very directionless, and like you're just kind of like following this band and you're like, I don't really know, like am I watching a movie? You're like, or is this just like a weird like MTV doc? And then like once it hits, it starts to hit harder. And I think that pacing really helps to it. So I like a movie that has like a decent pace to it and like just like a good feel. There's I do like a lot of international films, so I'm a big fan of like the Old Boy trilogy, like Lady Vengeance and like stuff like that.
We actually talked about Old Boy in a previous episode. It hasn't aired yet at the time of this recording, but I'll send you
with the Parasite one.
Yeah, with the Parasite. Yeah,
I haven't seen that yet though. I think I'll be a really big fan of that.
Yeah, Parasite is fantastic. Yeah, definitely watch that movie before you listen to that. Like shameless self promotion, but yeah, check that movie out for sure. It's one of the best. I kind of when I saw The Lighthouse, I was like, definitely favorite of the year. Nothing's gonna top this. But there's when the shit starts to hit the fan in Parasite, I was like, oh well, maybe
this is delicious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's perfect in a lot of like the twisted ways that you described. So I think it's right up your alley.
Probably, unfortunately. That's what I have been, like, I've had phases in my life, like, especially through horror, I've had, like, a lot of phases. When I was younger, I was really into, like, monster movies and slasher movies. And then when I kind of, like, got into, like, my high school years, I'd watch things like Grotesque, and, like, I've seen Serbian film, and, like, stupid shit like that. Right. So, like, I have an appreciation for lots of different kind of horror, so, like, a lot of horror movies are close to my heart. I do enjoy Halloween, because I remember watching, like, AMC. They had that whole little jingle about Michael Myers, and they'd play the movies, like 31 Days of Michael Myers.
Right.
I do love Jason also. Like, I think it's like New Blood is one of my favorites because it has the girl. She's like psychic powers. Like, I was sick. I don't know. I'd like a good time and like a fun time. I've admired a lot of like Sam Raimi, like Evil Dead. So it's just sort of like a mission. I like a lot of movies.
So I'm gonna guess Evil Dead 2 is your favorite of the three, or Army of Darkness?
I'm an Evil Dead 2. I do like the more, I wouldn't say based in reality, but like based in the same universe, as the first one.
It's not as off the wall.
Yeah,
right?
Army of Darkness is fun, don't get me wrong, but it is I think that was them having fun. That was like a guilty pleasure. They were like, we're gonna make this and we're gonna like it, if no one else likes it.
Right. So yeah, like campy horror movies, right up your alley.
And then I do like things that are a bit more avant-garde. Like I remember The Weeknd. I really got into Jean-Luc Godard through that. Some French new wave cinema. Other than that, I've been really into animation lately. That's why I kind of like brought up animation at first, because I have been just like very interested in it. I think it's a lot harder to develop a universe that way, and I think it's a really interesting to see how the obstacles of them as writers compared to script writers.
Right, yeah.
Because I think they have a bit more to work with, but I don't think that's also always the best thing when you have so much wide space and like so much range, and like it's also very competitive because you are trying to capture like maybe a target audience, but that target audience might not end up being who's watching, because sometimes people make like cartoons for like younger kids, and then like these whole group of like 17 to like 24-year-old or like Teen Titans. Like Teen Titans had a very like and then there was Young Justice. I was very into Young Justice.
I'm not familiar with that one.
It was really, if you like comic books, you'll really get a good, like, they put a lot of care into it, and there's a lot of characters you don't usually see, which I thought was cool, especially someone who is a bit more familiar, more so with DC. What else? I don't know.
No, that's a pretty good coverage. I guess I should have asked this one earlier because we had a perfect segue just now, but going back, I've asked it consistently to every guest I've had on who is kind of like in a media related endeavor in life. I find, I touched on this in the first episode a little bit, and in the third episode, because we had the guy on who directly had that moment for me, but I think that anyone who wants to do like movies or media or anything like that for a living, they all kind of have like, they're like inherently interested in like the art of storytelling or like making movies, but there's always like the one moment or like the one movie that they saw where they were like, yep, that's what I want to do. That's I know now that that's what I have to do in my life. For me, it was watching Kevin Smith's Red State in high school.
Really?
At like midnight at like a party with my friend's house. So that was like when I saw that, I was like, man, that's I want to direct that. That's a guy who knows how to make a good movie. So, what, do you have a moment like that or a movie like that?
I got into this on a whim. A friend of mine and I I don't know why. Like, she was very interested in making like video projects for school, and one day I was just like, all right, I'll help you. And we made up a stupid superhero for like a science project called Captain Bromine. And like I was like, oh, I really want to do this. So like, I kind of like helped myself along that way. But like, once I got to college, I saw like a few like Wrong Cops. Wrong Cops like really was like, yeah, like this is like really weird. Like I really like this. Like maybe I can be this. And like Lars von Trier, like I did watch like Antichrist. I was like, oh, I'm like, this is movie. A whole different kind of level of like filmmaking. Like this is something a bit more like avant-garde, like a bit more, it's still brutal, but like it looked beautiful, it was very well acted, like it was a tragedy, it was great. It was like a whole mess. The Invitation also really inspired me because especially the setup, like Johnson did tell me about it before, like it kind of got like really big, and he was like, you may not like it because it's by the lady who did Jennifer's Body, and I'm like, why do people talk shit about Jennifer's? Why do people assume I don't like Jennifer's Body? Like, why is that always like an assumption about me? I don't know why that assumption's wrong.
I think that's kind of an assumption in general, because I mean, the first time, like I at least from my own experience, the first time I heard that premise, I was like, oh, okay, like that really, that's what we're gonna do. And then I watched it and I was like, okay, that has its place. That's not
it
bad.
had its moment,
yeah,
and it kind of missed its moment. But I think she definitely came back super hard with Invitation. I think that was really cool to see, like, her just grow in such... they weren't really super close together, but such in a short, like, amount of time to totally, like, flip her whole storytelling sort of scene. Not saying the content was wrong with, like, Jennifer's Body, but it's interesting to see how she elevated herself.
It's definitely, like, because we keep on talking, like, it's... Jennifer's Body is like a very, very B movie. Like, and it's a matter of going from that B movie to an A movie,
yeah,
you know what I mean? It's not necessarily like you said. It's not as though this should be looked down upon. It should be looked at like, okay, we shouldn't hold this to the same standard as we hold the Invitation.
They had different intents.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like people didn't get Adam Wingard's You're Next. Like, I've ran into a lot of people who are really mad, and they're like, that was fucking stupid. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like, it was like campy, it was fun, and like, I also have a lot of respect for Adam Wingard and like Simon Barrett, like VHS. I don't know what, like, Death Note was bad.
Yeah,
but VHS.
VHS is great.
VHS is great.
It has a lot of. I'm not a huge fan. I'm more of a fan of the second one than
with
the first
zombies.
one. Yeah, I really like I feel like the second one is more consistently great than the first one is, if that makes any sense.
It has more hits.
Right, yeah. I think from the first one, I really like the, I don't remember the names of the segments, but the one with the spyglasses in the motel room with the I like you, that
the
girl.
Succubus.
Yeah. That's easily, I think, the best segment in that entire, I think that's the one they start on, too.
That is the start
which kind of made me mad, because I was like, that's the, like, you...
I don't even remember actually which ones were in that one. It was that one.
There's that one. There's the they follow it up with the one where it's like the couple on vacation and there's someone stalking them. That one's really good.
That one too. There's that weird. No, is that the second one? No, that was ABC's of Death with that weird one where he's on the balcony and like the prostitute like stabs him or something.
Yeah. But yeah, the first one had that segment. The stalker. the sort of Friday the 13th. No, it was literally called. That's the one I remember. Tuesday the 14th.
With the
glitchy.
That was cool.
Yeah.
I thought it got kind of dumb.
That one was one where I
the concept was good.
Concept was good, but it got very dumb when they get up there and she's like,
they started
all
talking.
Die up here. Yeah.
When they started talking, you were just kind of like, meh.
Right. Yeah. And it's what else was in it? There's that one where it's like Halloween and like those people go to like that house and it's empty and there's like a weird like a seance or something going on in the attic. I really liked that one.
I don't remember that one.
It's like
now I have to watch VHS.
Yeah, VHS is a great horror movie. If you haven't seen it, but yeah, the second one I find had way more, like you said, consistently good moments in it. The only like. We mentioned Adam Wingard.
He had the only bad one.
Like is his segment.
He did have the only bad one.
So yeah, Adam Wingard. It's funny that like his segment is kind of like the worst of that entire movie. But yeah, that VHS. I'd recommend both of them. I wasn't a huge fan of VHS Viral. Did you see that one?
It was dumb.
Yeah.
It was. You know, I thought it had an interesting kind of like the A story, like. Yeah. The in between the segments, it was kind of like interesting, but then it just kind of really went nowhere. Like it kind of just went around in circles, I felt, and like
I think that's the problem with the A story in all three of them. The segments are way better than what connects each of them. The first one especially I thought was really weak.
It was weird, and it seemed like that was a very 2000, like I don't know why it seemed very like Jackass, like 2000, like weird 20-year-old boys with a video camera doing weird stuff.
I feel like the best one probably out of all was the second one. I think
the house
second one,
yeah,
it was easily that one overall is I think the best in the series.
It made the most sense.
Which isn't really saying much because it's still very ridiculous by the time you find out what's actually going on. But I feel like it had the best like payoff. You know what I mean? Like when the kid does and then 2 seconds later you see them come in from the beginning and like that
it had a full circle moment. Right, you're like,
damn it! Like, but
we've been tricked.
It was VHS 2 was a great movie. So I guess jumping off of that point of the kind of campy B movie talking point, we're getting into our film discussion portion of the show. So for anyone who's tuning in for the first time, I had a YouTube show where I would recommend movies. It got flagged by copyright all the time for showing clips, and I hated the sound of my voice reading a script, so I still wanted to do film discussions, so that's why we're doing this podcast. So every episode, I recommend the guest a movie, the guest recommends me a movie, and we discuss. So in this case, the movie Emi recommended me was 2013's Raze.
Yes.
I don't remember what company produced. I think it was very independent. I think
it was very independent. I actually don't remember what company did it either. I wrote it down in my scribblings, but then I just put down the only important point was like both Naomi Watts and Zoe Bell both executive produced their movies because I thought that was the coolest thing. I was like, forget director.
Right. I think the director I recognized because he's Josh Waller because he's produced. I don't remember which ones off the top of my head, but I know he's produced at least one or two other movies we've talked about in the show so far, and I think there's like another movie coming up that the Color Out of Space movie. I think he produced that one.
That's a cool name.
So yeah, he's had his hand in almost every, well, not almost, a bunch of the episodes we've done so far. But yeah. So summarize Raze because I feel like
it's an experience.
Yeah.
I feel like as a movie, it's not quite quality. I feel like it does have a lot of flaws, but I feel like there's a lot of unintentional magic there. Just from the start, like, not starting off with Sabrina, but starting off as Jamie, like, that feeling, that connection of being like, okay, why are we here? Like, just kind of, like, looking around helpless, but at the same time, it also distracted me because that whole red filter, I'm kind of over that. Like, a lot of people do red, and they're like, ooh, it means scary. Like, oh, evil. I really, like, and I thought about it, and I really wish they would have done, like, a rich purple color to kind of like, because it sort of ties into the organization then of like sort of like this regal like religious thing
Right.
which that's where it gets really stupid. The whole organization, I feel, is very bland. But essentially, the movie is bad organization, kidnaps women, women fight to death. Not really sure why. They never really, they kind of, like, try to make it seem like women are these magical beings, but there's no real, like, magic in it, besides, like, that as long as you could kill other people, apparently, like, you're the best woman ever.
You're, like, enlightened
yeah,
or
if you can kill 20 women with your bare hands, you hit nirvana.
Right.
Essentially.
There's kind of, like, promises of, like, what you can join the organization or whatever.
That was even, like, thrown out by one of the girls. Like, they didn't even offer that themselves. It seems like someone threw it out, and they're like, oh, that's
a good idea.
That's a
we
good
didn't think about that.
I had, like, 3 writers on it, too, I'm pretty sure. So I was a little, like...
That's kind of impressive in, like, a bad
way. Yeah, that's what I was kind of... I had these moments, but, like, really, it was, like, the writing was one of the odder points, along with, like, the transitions. But in the first, like, when the cold open, like I said, we first meet Jamie, and, like, she's like, what is this? Like, and then Sabrina pulls on that act of she's like, oh, I'm not here to hurt you. Like, I thought that was really, like, the movie came out swinging. I thought it came out very well. It kind of, like, creates the setup of, like, Sabrina's our guide. So she, like, invites her in, and then I like that they show us instead of, like, having Sabrina, like, telling us, being like, hey, we have to fight to the death. Instead, they just, like, throw up the title card.
Yeah.
Which I thought was the only good use of the title card.
Yeah.
Because, like, they very heavily relied on it then. It sort of, like, fell into that trap of, like, where a movie, they're like, oh, we're traveling across country, so they do, like, a montage.
Right off where we are, yeah.
Yeah, it sort of felt like that. But I felt in the first time they used it, the audience instantly is like, oh, no. They're about to fight, but I don't think they realized how far the fight was going to go.
Yeah.
And I do feel like the fight scenes are very, like, they're well coordinated, and I feel like they're very realistic, for as realistic as it could be, because with the first fight in particular, like, when Jamie starts crying, Sabrina, like, at this point, you can tell that she can't see these women as individuals. They're just a hill to her. Like, she's like, how many more do I have to kill at the end of the fight? Like, you can tell, like, it's established that she has been doing this for who knows how long. She's been killing women. But just seeing her, like, screaming at this girl as she's beating in her face, being like, stop crying, like, stop it. Like, you know, it's hurting her because she just wants this girl to die as quickly as possible. But the girl's not really letting her. Like, it's this weird, uncomfortable struggle of, like, I want to kill her fast, but, like, she's crying and, like, it's messing with me emotionally, and that whole sort of, like, inner turmoil.
Yeah, and that's definitely prevalent throughout the whole movie, especially when there's a scene where there's 2 women who are not like, I mean, I guess as, like, much of friends as you could be in that scenario.
Yeah.
And they don't want to fight, and they have that moment of, like, so what happens if neither of us does anything? And then they realize that they kind of have to do, like, I don't want to spoil it just yet, but, like, there's a lot of moments
I thought that was the best written scene, honestly, that fight between Cody and Teresa. Like, that is later on, but that is really good. I thought the women were really, like, I wish there was more diversity, and I don't necessarily mean even, I do wish more in race, but, like, during that fight montage they had, it was really hard to tell who was who, because a lot of girls had blonde hair, long, like, blonde hair. A lot of them had brown, like, they all had, like, similar length hairs.
They're all dressed exactly the same.
Yeah, so I kind of got confused, like, that girl who Sabrina fought in the elevator, she kind of looked like Cody, so I was a little, like, I've seen the movie before, so I knew it wasn't her, but, like, I could see how someone else would be like, oh, isn't that who she's friends with, though?
Right, yeah. It definitely, like, it kind of bothered me when we go, like, wide and there's, like, that angle, like, looking down on them. Yeah. But whenever we're in close-up, I didn't really have a problem.
No.
Because the one thing I will say, like, it's weird, too, because, like, the fight scenes, like you said, were very well choreographed. I really liked the way they were edited, but there was a lot of editing choices, especially early on, that I didn't really like, where, like, there was a lot of close-up for no real reason.
Yeah.
There was a lot of quick cuts and scenes that didn't really need quick cuts. That kind of, like, buffs itself out after the first, like, 20 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So I was glad that wasn't throughout, but on the whole, it is, at the heart of it, is a very, like, it's a B movie. It's like, it's a B movie with heart, I should say, because it's not all about, like, oh, these women are fighting.
I don't even think it was intentional either. I do think some of these themes were very unintentional. I do think a lot of it has to do with, like, these women's body. I think the cast really sold this idea with their body language, because, like, their dialogue, like, they peppered in, like, how, like, Sabrina was a POW. I thought that was very, like, on the nose.
Right.
Like, he was like, oh, just because you're a POW, you think you're hot shit. And it's like, okay. Like, it's cool to know that, because then it explains her skills. And they do, I will give them that. Like, even though the first few minutes of, like, the cold open were, like, done with she's, like, on that date. But when they're having that conversation, when she's, like, all shy about being a professional kickboxer, like, or wanting to be a professional kickboxer, I do think it at least sets the standard that, like, these women know how to fight. And, like, at least, like, gives a rational reason for, like, why these people fight.
Yeah.
Well, at least why they have the abilities to fight. Because there's someone, like how Jamie said she wanted to be a kickboxer. Sabrina was POW. But then we get to Cody, who I think is, like, even though she didn't have a lot to say and, like, most of the time she's crying, I do think she was, like, one of the most interesting characters. Because I think that's unfortunately how a lot of women do learn how to either throw a punch or take a punch, is unfortunately through, like, domestic situations. Like, whether it be, like, my mom's new boyfriend or, like, my dad or, like, whoever, like, it is to that girl. Unfortunately, that's usually where they learn how to do it. So I thought it was very relatable, and that's it. Even if they didn't mean it, like, even if it was kind of, like, cliche, I think it did kind of, like, pepper a little bit in of that realness that, like, not everybody's, like, a judo master. I don't do, like, kickboxing. It's just, like, she is like, no, I was just enraged and I learned how to defend myself. Like, compared to someone who is, like, Phoebe, who is just, like, obnoxious about wanting to kill people.
Yeah. But, I mean, you gotta, well, not necessarily you gotta, but I feel like in that scenario that it is kind of by necessity that you had to have the one you love to hate.
The foil.
I mean? Right. So, but yeah, the one thing that we touched on a little bit was, I guess the reason why these fight scenes are so well choreographed is because a lot of these women are stunt women. Yeah. As, like, their main, like, Zoe Bell famously was Uma Thurman's stunt woman for Kill Bill, and she was also the star of Death Proof, another Tarantino movie.
Yeah, I told my boyfriend that. He's like, I had no clue that was the same woman.
That's really weird.
Yeah, he's like, I don't know how he didn't realize that. I was like, oh.
I guess she hasn't aged well. I don't know. Like,
no, I don't think he just connected it, to be honest. I think he was just like, I didn't think he thought she'd get more jobs or something. I don't know.
But yeah, she was fantastic. One thing I'm kind of impressed by is that she did kind of seamlessly make that leap from stunt woman to actress.
No, like, I thought she was really, really good.
Yeah, she really sells the role. All the emotional scenes, the scenes where she does get really angry, like it just seems so natural to her.
Yeah, but there were, like, the most interesting angle to her was also, like, kind of what, like, led to this, like, weird editing, like, it was just weird editing at points, like, the fact, like, it's established she's a mother, but I think the interesting part is when she's like, oh, I haven't seen that kid for, like, she's like, I don't even know her name. Right. She's like, I haven't met her for 13 years, so it's interesting to have, like, this mother archetype, like, I guess everybody assumed at least one of them would have kids, but she doesn't even know her kids, so it's sort of like this, like, detached, like, mother figure.
Yeah.
But, like, then, like, they did the obnoxious edits of, like, her kid in and, like, stuff like that, and it was like, But it was really cool to see, like, that she just wasn't, like, it wasn't that she was a mother fighting for her daughter. It was just her fighting for a child she basically didn't know.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Kind of makes it distinct from, like, not like the, it is a unique movie, but that aspect kind of does make it distinct from, like, movies of this type, where it's like, she's not necessarily fighting for, to, like, because she loves the kid. It's like you said, she's fighting because it's a life that she doesn't want to be taken away. It's
like, even though she doesn't know, like, the girl's, like, 13, so it's not like she's a little kid, so, like, by this point she has, like, her own like attitude and stuff like that. So she doesn't even know how the kid is, but she just wants the best for her. Like in her one breakdown when she was like, "Oh, I was gonna name you Samantha," like that was kind of okay written. I thought it was a bit odd, but I thought it was also a bit nice because we did get to see like a bit softer side opposed in between like the beatings.
Yeah,
because that's really it essentially is just like it comes to the point where it is like one fight after another, but they like I said, the way they choreograph them are interested in the decisions they make. Like I noticed like Sabrina a lot, she would go for like the mouth and like try and suffocate to be. There was like another girl who did like gouging eyes, and like of course Phoebe's a lot more brutal just by nature. And then some of the girls, like there's a good misdirect with like Brenda and Nancy, where like the mentally ill, where she's like hallucinating about like her child or whatever, and like pawing out the ground, and like you think, oh, like easy target, doesn't turn out too well.
Right, yeah.
Like she's sort of, yeah. And then they also like randomly the talk that the wife of the organization who's from Saved by the Bell.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, is she Kelly? I think. Is that her name?
I think, yeah, maybe.
It's either Kelly or Tiffany, but Tiffany doesn't sound right.
Okay, we'll say Kelly.
We'll say Kelly. But yeah, she was in it. I thought she did a good job, too.
Yeah,
weirdly.
especially in that, I think the scene you're referencing where, like, the one girl doesn't want to fight anymore,
Yeah.
and she has to, like, talk her up. Like, that was, like, it's very twisted, but it's very, like, almost heartwarming in a weird way. Like, it's strange.
It is. And she brings this, like, weird element to it. But, like, then also tying it to her character, that's why I say, like, I think they kind of had, like, some sort of unintentional themes, because when she's fighting Sabrina, and Sabrina's like, how could you do this? You're a woman. Like, it kind of shows that there are different levels of, like, sticking together within the female group, because, like, right away when they're all together, they're all trying to plan, but then slowly, like, you can tell who's who. Like, we're not just all gonna band together because we're women. Like, some of them, like, Phoebe, she wanted to fight. Brenda, she was, like, not there. Like, Cody's crying. Teresa's trying to think of a plan, but there is no plan.
Yeah. It definitely, they did pick, because like you said, it would have been very easy, I feel like, to go down that road of, like, we're all gonna band together and find a way out.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like, that is kind of the more realistic aspect of the movie, is, like,
One
in
of
that
the
situation,
few.
right? Yeah, it would be kind of every woman for themselves, and there wouldn't, like, I think they even say at one point where it's like, we were all together and we didn't do shit. Like,
yeah. There were 6 of us together and, like, none of us did shit. And but then that brings to,
I guess we could get into spoilers if you want
yeah,
at this
I was
point,
gonna say
so-
that kind of brings us to, I think, the Cody and Teresa fight, which I
Right.
think is the best written scene, probably, aside from the opening. I really did like the opening, besides like the cuts
Yeah.
of like the dumb stuff, like Sabrina being devious and like really tricking her. Like, it sort of establishes that, like, every man for himself. But this sort of like changes that whole, like, towards the end it starts to like slowly unravel, like, Sabrina as a character. Like, she's not as so much like, I have to fight for myself. She does develop connections with these women, and you could tell as if she's like cheering on Cody to like tighten her legs, or like cheering on Teresa to like punch her in the face. Like, it comes to this moment where, like, Teresa just gave Cody the advice. She's like, you can't fight for your mom, who they're threatening to kill if she doesn't fight. You have to fight for yourself. And then they're face to face in the ring. And it comes to that moment of truth. And, like, I'm upset that we didn't hear more from Teresa, because I think this moment, like, really shows when she's like, how's your mom? And I think that's the moment that really changed that movie, was like, how's your mom? And just that whole talk about how her husband's not doing well, and that if her mom's doing well and that her mom loves her, square up. And that I like that she didn't like give in. She was training Cody. She was like, if you're gonna square up and you're gonna win this, you're gonna have to fight some tough bitches. Like,
exactly.
Like, you're gonna
As
have to take
evidenced
a
by the very next.
I know,
scene,
we've been
which
new.
was-
like, we knew, but
it was hard.
it was very hard, because like you just watched Teresa sacrifice herself in a sense, even though it wasn't. She did put up a fight. She did like get some blows in, but unfortunately it was a simple.
Yeah.
It was a choke out. She was out, dragged out, and then Psycho.
All for nothing.
Yeah. And then this
literally
girl...
even said it. I think Phoebe does even say, what was all that for?
Yeah, like literally 2 seconds later. And I feel bad because I feel like that could have been a bigger moment. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they should have stepped up Cody's like choreo a bit more and like showed a bit more of a fight.
Yeah.
But the movie was running out by that point. Like you could tell stuff's starting to get rushed and like they're like, how are we gonna end this? Because I think that was like their crescendo.
But yeah, it definitely did. And talk about like a huge payoff moment too, when Sabrina and I keep on getting the names mixed up. Phoebe is the psycho.
Yeah, she's the Phoebe.
So when Sabrina and Phoebe finally have a very quick over and done with fight. I love it. Yeah, it was because you're expecting like, again, with a movie like this, you're expecting like a big long like 10-minute thing where like they'll throw a few punches and then they'll have like snippy dialogue, and then one of them like finishes it with a one-liner,
like their evil plan.
Right? Yeah. So, but there's no payoff like that. It's literally Zoe Bell runs in, beats the shit out of her,
bomb rushes her.
And I don't even think Phoebe gets like a kick in.
She gets like a few, but like it's very. I like that Sabrina rushed her because I think it shows that military training. Like it shows that fight in her. It shows that like it's not about like a lot of people talk about like strong women and they're like, oh, like emotionally. No, I wanted to see like a physically strong woman just like go for it, and she did. It was a very quick. It was a very to the point. But I thought it was an impressive, like especially like her leg work towards the end, like. Some of that was like very difficult to watch because she was literally in one place, but she was turning back and forth. Like it was very physically like involved. It was cool. And
above all, I think almost even more satisfying than like the ultimate, like when she finally gets out and she kills the people who kidnapped her. I'd argue that the Phoebe kill was, I think, the most satisfying.
Besides when she flicks the shit at the guard. That was very satisfying, and when she does kill him at the end, that was also. I think actually that was the worst part. Was some of the ending was very fantastical. It was a bunch of bullshit. Like,
I guess we can get into that.
Yeah.
Then. So, at what point for you did it reach that fantastical part? Because I was with it until she actually gets out. Did it happen earlier for you?
It was a little earlier because like, the fucking organization, they had like this jigsaw logic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you watch the first Law movie and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then like you watch like the 8th and you're like, you're just killing people. Yeah. And that's how it kind of felt. It was like they were like trying to like like when they were talking to, I believe her name was Isabella, and they're like, they had that very beautiful thing where they're like, where they probably got the name of it because he said something about like the women raising from like the ground or something. It was like this nice view. Artsy piece, but when they're like talking to her and like saying all that, I don't know why, it was just so fantastical at that moment. I was like, you're just saying words, like there's no real meaning to this. You're like trying to find like some sort of like reason for why these people are doing this, but it's the end of the film. Yeah. It's too late now.
You can't go back and add this whole long backstory about where this all came from and why you're doing it. It's just like, and you don't even really need that. So it is kind of like, I guess I didn't really think about it at the time, but now that you say that, I guess in hindsight it is kind of grating to like try and force an explanation when you didn't even really need one. All you got out of it was just, hey, like you even said, bad organization kidnaps women. Like, what else do you need?
That's what I mean. Like, they didn't really, like, I see they were trying to go for, like, this weird, like, Mormon, LGS, like, sort of look to them. And, like, the only good scene with, like, all of those people in it was at the end when she is walking with the guns and, like, they're out of focus. And just the way they move behind her I thought was really interesting. But, like, as soon as she, like, was walking, and then, actually, the moment that broke it was when they zoomed in on the sniper, the guy who shot her, and they tried to connect him to being the guy in the first shot, like in the first scene. I was like, why? That's what it, like, unnecessary. That was like the most unnecessary, like, wrapped end. I'm like, I didn't see this guy the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
I saw him in one shot, and now he's shooting Zoe Bell. Like, now.
Mm-hmm. What was... So, my big thing was... I was with it, and as she starts to run away, I thought that's where it was going to end, just her running off into the sunset, and I was
fine with that, yeah.
Yeah, and then the shot happens, and I was like, oh, god damn. Like, I for a minute, I thought it was going to be a case where it's like, she goes down, and you think, like, is that it? And then she kills, like, there was going to be a moment where the sniper comes up to her, and it's, like, the final... kill.
Oh, if you would have, like, punched him in the face.
Yeah, I thought that they were going for that, but then I see, like, it's right through, like, her heart, and I'm like, oh, okay, no, we're not
badass blood splatter.
Yeah. That kind of, it irritated me, but then when they start showing, like, the flashbacks, and it shows, like, she was in the bar that night when Jamie gets kidnapped, I think for, like, a split second.
Yeah, they were all, like, all
that.
in that same bar, like...
Yeah, so what was that?
That's what I
couldn't
mean.
make any sense of it.
That's what I mean. I felt like it was such... They were trying to do, like, the Stoker thing, where they, connect the first shot of the film with, like, the last shot of the film, and, like, it just didn't really make sense. It was just poor choices. Mm-hmm. It was an unnecessary plot point. I didn't really get... I don't think they needed to have that guy besides them talking about how she wanted to be a professional kickboxer. Like, I think that was his service. Like, that you could have... I didn't think about him for the rest of the film. Yeah. I didn't care how they... Did you care how they got there?
No.
I didn't really care how they got... Like, I didn't care how they got there. I didn't care how they found them. I didn't care... I honestly didn't even care how they had their physical abilities. Like, you know what I mean? Like, point like that, I wouldn't have even cared at that point.
But yeah, I feel like if anything, then he should have been, like, one of those guards.
He should have been more prevalent.
Right, yeah.
Like, you literally... I looked, like... If they would... Because they did a fade shot to, like, him then, like, in the bar. And I was like, if they wouldn't have done that, I would have found no significance with him. Mm-hmm. I just would have been like... So that guy...
Yeah. But, yeah, I thought it was a good movie for, like we said, what it was trying to be. Because you can't really judge something like this against, like... You can't look at Kill Bill and this, and, like, I mean, I guess you could, but, like, you can't really look at the two of them in the same light. Where it's like, Kill Bill is a grade A movie, relishing in some B movie aspects, but, like, this is, like, full on, we're B movie and we're proud of it. So I think that most people would probably get turned off by this if it's not your cup of tea. I know, at least my whole thing, I'll even admit, like, watching it up until the end of the first fight, I was like, I'm not really... this just kind of seems like
it's
torture porn. But then as it goes on, I'm like, okay, we're working within this B-movie pseudo-exploitation format.
Yeah.
So I can't really treat this as like as something that's trying to be like a grandiose, like, statement about society. But so I think in that area it definitely succeeds for the most part. It's just like we said, the ending is very
fantastical.
Right. Should have been rewritten, I think.
I think there should have been a lot more thought. There just should have been a bit more of a gentle hand. And I think, honestly, if they would have embraced more of the grindhouse aesthetic, I think someone like Tarantino probably would have recommended this film. Like, you know what I mean? If they would have played on, like, that, like, kill, pussycat, kill, faster sort of, like, grain look, I think it probably would have been more digestible to a lot more people. Because I think they would have been, like, they would have kind of expected the, like, pounds and pounds of blood and, like, the pounds and pounds of, like, just torture, you know?
Yeah. But that's not to say that it's a bad movie. I still very much enjoyed it, with all of its flaws. I think from the beginning up until, like, an hour and 25 minutes, it's great. Yeah,
it was only like an hour and 30, but I do think it probably could have been a 90-minute film.
But yeah, it needed a few rewrites. I think that whoever edited it, the only justification I could think of is, like, they did hire someone to do the beginning, and then they fired him.
Or he quit or something.
And then someone else who was more competent stepped up. But yeah, I have no real major complaints about the movie other than that. It was a very good recommendation. So
yeah, I think it's on Hulu.
Yeah, Hulu, and then you can rent it on YouTube. Or no, you can buy it on YouTube for, I think, like $12, which I don't know if it's worth
not
that.
worth $12.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, if it's between watching it, go pirate it. It's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
But
it was, no, because it is worth the watch, and, but it is, I would classify it as I would say very much as a student film. If I had to say.
If someone from Kutztown had a budget, this is probably what they would turn out if this was their cup of tea.
Exactly. Like, it's very... I feel like it was very rushed at the end, but that doesn't destroy, like, the fun along the way, and it doesn't, like, destroy, like, the relationships we see, and, like, the cast did do an amazing job, I thought.
And Doug Jones wasn't in, like, 50 pounds of makeup for once, which was
he could have been his naturals for, like, 5. He had, like, so few... That's what I feel like they didn't really utilize them. Like, they were so... You heard his voice, but, like...
Yeah. He was a good fit, I think, too. He kind of, like, goes into that, like, smarmy sort of, like, smug villain very well. He was great. All right, so then, going off sort of in the same theme of violence, in some ways, I guess you could say that this movie is... almost equally violent to Raze in some areas.
It blows it out of the water, though. Like, let's be real. Like, if you're gonna watch one of these movies, I totally suggest you watch Funny Games, just because it is, like, it's the more polished piece.
Yeah. And
it deals with these themes very, very well.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good way of summarizing it. So, yeah, it was 2008's Funny Games. It's an American remake by the same director. I don't know how to say his name. It's like Michel.
He's Austrian.
Haneke or Mike? Is it Michael or?
It might be like Mikhail.
I can't even. I'll throw his name up right here, and you guys can figure out how to pronounce it because I have no clue. But I tried to find an interview where, like, he says his name, and
he never does.
He never does.
He doesn't have to introduce himself.
Exactly. Yeah, but he's done a lot of great movies. Benny's Video. 71 Fragments of a Chronology of Chance. I think most famously he did Amour back in the early 2010s.
Oh, yeah.
But this is my favorite movie of his. He did another one recently called Happy End, I think. But, like I said, the Funny Games is easily my favorite thing that he's done. And it's a remake of a movie that he had done already in Austria, like you said, in 1997 or 98, I think he did this as, like, an independent Austrian film, and then 10 years later he remade the version we're talking about with, I think it's the exact same set built from scratch.
Really?
The same plot. Yeah, I think because I remember hearing something that, like, they had the blueprints for the original house, and then they just built a new house.
Just like, fuck it.
With the same specifications, yeah. But, so it's really the only difference is that it's an American cast, and nothing's really changed plot-wise. In some cases it's the exact same shots and framing. So I didn't make her watch both of them for reference, but did you watch both?
No, I did watch I did look at screenshots just to compare, like, the cast early on.
Okay.
And like I said, I mentioned before we had this podcast that I was like, oh, I could see why the American version, I wouldn't say even did better, but, like, appealed to us more was because of that hyper suburbia thing that they had going on with the cast.
And that was my main reason for recommending that over the Austrian version, because I'm never afraid to recommend something with subtitles, but I think that one thing that the American version has going for it way more than the Austrian one is that from a purely, like, visual standpoint, it's way more, like, polished. The whites are much whiter, everything looks a lot cleaner, and that kind of, I think, plays very heavily into that theme of, like, because the main point that movie, I feel, is trying to communicate is that we're a society that relishes violence to an extent in our
But we want to
media.
save face.
Hey, we want it, so I think that the fact that everything was, like, clean and polished and there's all these, like, horrible things happening was kind of a nice way of making that theme even more prevalent, so... But yeah, so what did you think of Funny
it was
Games?
so much...
Well, actually, here, sorry. I've gone on a tangent. I didn't mean to interrupt. So, Funny Games, it's rich family goes to a vacation house on a lake. These two weird dudes show up and hold them captive and torture them, basically. And they got to escape. So, now, sorry, what did you think of Funny Games?
Eggs. Eggs. Eggs is what I thought. Eggs to 100. No, it was very, very well done. I could see, it was really cool because I could see a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, The Weeknd. I could see like a very Jean-Luc Godard in his shot composition with like, just like that random piece of the house, like that random like, it's like a quilt on the wall, and like the random shot of like them driving. First, when I started watching it, I thought it was very alienating at first with them talking about classical music, but I think they did that on purpose to kind of like, I didn't want to be like, oh my god, white people. Right. But I think that's kind of like the vibe they wanted to get, and I think it's very interesting, like, looking back on it, how like the first incident was, my friends are acting strange. And like that incident, I was like, oh, I'm like, that is weird that their friends are acting strange, but like I didn't think about it until like the very, very end, and you're like, oh my god.
Yeah.
You're like, I understand what was happening. Like, I like that moment where it was very well thought. There was a line. It was that red line he had going on.
Yeah.
And it was very, very, very fun. And like meeting the boys, I know one was called Paul for sure, but the other one, he kept calling, he was like Tom, then he was like Peter, and then he just kept calling him Tubby, which I felt bad.
Yeah.
But like, they were very interesting, and like, I thought it was so funny because they made me think of, like, I was like, the guy who wrote Hobo in with a Shotgun definitely watched this movie and definitely stole fucking Slick and whatever his name was from these two boys, like 1,000%. And then like the whole the games later on that they play with the family, I saw like that tie to like maybe like that inspired like Sacred of a Killing Deer with like that whole like sort of living room torture dungeon setting.
Yeah. It's a fantastic movie, and like you said, the two villains, I think that's another reason why I like the American version more, is that they come across way more twisted, and they fit way more, and I guess that's just probably like a cultural difference.
Our lens.
It's like you just have these like two tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed boys who are like in like these white polos, and they're like, "Oh man, these new golf clubs are great." I like. It's like It's again, it goes with that theme of like, high class, but like deep down, we're all kind of have these like twisted notions and ideas, and their performance, I think, especially Michael Pitt, like the main guy who like he breaks the fourth wall all the time. Yeah, he was easily, I think, my favorite performance in that movie. I hated him so much.
He was so I loved them. I really did. Like, I was very charmed by them. I hated, like, they were the kings of gaslighting. Like, their dialogue made me so anxious. Like, I was like, when they were like, we just wanted eggs, like, they were just gaslighting the shit out of her, and then like she was like, will you please just throw them out, and he was like, what do you mean, like the husband, like all of their,
even before that's like before anything even bad happens.
It was just like, so much gaslighting though, and like you feel, you know, nothing wrong has happened, but like you feel like something wrong is happening, and you know something wrong is happening because like they don't know these people, but they're just, and you could tell because like the boys are looking around, and like it's like this very like, you're like, they're gonna do something, but they keep talking about these eggs. They keep just talking about these damn eggs.
Yeah, it's
it's so funny.
It's funny, but it's like you said, it's very unsettling, and it goes out of its way to like really like from very early on make you unsettled through like because it starts off, like you said, so innocent. Of just like, hey, can we're the neighbors ran out of eggs. Can we borrow some? Yeah. And then it's like, oh, I broke these eggs. Can I have some more? Or, oh, I'm so sorry, I dropped your only cell phone in the water. Like, and with each one, you're like, I mean, going into it, I knew like, okay, bad things are going to happen to this family. But like, it's just the way that they do it is like so. And I think that, especially in this movie, but in his movies in general, he really likes to make things painfully slow and drawn out. I think very much to the aid of this movie, because everything happens almost in real time, and like you said, it makes you feel very anxious.
Does it really? I didn't notice that. Like, that it almost lined up with like.
I thought so, because it's very like, especially the nighttime. I mean, there's a little bit of a jump when we get towards the end after like the prayer scene.
Yeah.
There's a jump from there to the end of the movie,
That
but
makes,
not much. Yeah.
That was a clear... We knew that was going to probably happen. Like, a jump in time was going to happen sometime.
Well,
so.
I mean, I think they literally have a jump in time, but we won't spoil that yet.
No, that's the only scene I knew from the movie, actually, because I watched, like, top 10. So I knew that was, like, the setup sort of thing. But that was all I knew going in, sort of.
Well, actually, I feel like we've given a good enough summary. Let's jump into that. So, yeah, spoilers if you haven't seen either Funny Games. Check that out. I don't remember how you can watch it. I had a DVD of it, but I'm sure it has to be available on, like, Prime or something like that.
I forgot. I think, actually, you might have to buy it. I don't think it is on any streaming services.
Really?
I think I saw a copy of it on Daily Motion, but it was in French, I'm pretty sure.
Because
I was curious to see if there was, like, maybe some alternative way, like someone had it up, like, easy to click on.
Yeah.
But I was very unsuccessful with that. A lot of it was dubbing, because I did find actually another version, but it was the American one with an Austrian dub over it. It was very meta.
So pointless.
Yeah, it was very meta.
But yeah, no, if you can find a copy of Funny Games, you should definitely watch it. It's you definitely have to be, I guess, kind of like open-minded, like, to a lot of like what it's trying to say to like really enjoy it, because it's a movie that kind of goes out of its way to make you mad and irritate you. And that's not everyone's cup of tea, but if you can stand that, then you should definitely check it out. But yeah, so what you said that you had seen that scene before with the remote.
Yeah, the infamous.
What was your like initial? Well, I mean, I guess you didn't really have much of an initial take because you didn't have the context of what came before. But what I guess now that you have the context of seeing the movie and then that scene on top of it, what was your opinion of that?
I thought it was. See, they laid the groundwork beforehand, because I thought so in, like, the first game they played, when they were playing Hot and Cold with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that game in particular was very, very smart, because it showcased him as a director. Because you didn't see him, you just heard him yelling, barking orders at, no pun intended, orders at her, being like, hot, cold, hot, and, like, just watching her, like, motion around. So, like, already early on, I knew they were set up as almost like a directing force, and like, especially him in particular, he was the driving, like, the one boy was the driving force while the other boy was like the answers. Mm-hmm. As weird as that sounds, because that's all he basically did was give answers to like why they were doing this, which were very clear. Well, they were very clear. It were just great reasons though, like because we could, like,
right, yeah.
And I thought it was very fitting. I thought it made a lot of sense, strangely, because like
it's interesting.
It sort of plays on that thing that Final Destination, like, you know what, it like how you can't escape fate. Mm-hmm. Like, even if you escape death this time, you're just gonna die. Like, it's gonna happen, and that's sort of like the vibe. It didn't come off as like trying to be like because being like quirky like that and like looking at the camera and stuff wasn't super in at the time, and like wasn't really like something an audience looked for. So I thought it was very, very interesting. Yeah,
I can't think of another movie where I'm sure that exists, but off the top of my head, I can't think of like a movie where like the bad guy is the one who breaks the fourth wall as much, and it's very, like I said, with like it going out of its way to piss you off. Like it's very, everything he says is like, the scene that I always show people is that first scene where they're all in the living room and he's like, let's make a bet that 12 hours from now you're all going to be dead.
Oh, after they beat smacked. I thought that was such a beautiful shot with them sitting on that couch and them just like on the other. I don't know what it was, like it was a wide too, but it was just so pretty.
Yeah. But like that scene where he does like look over at them and he says to the audience, he's like, who are you betting on? Like, you think they stand a chance? Why do you think that? Like, it's so... we keep on saying the games, like, it literally in the title, Funny Games, it's playful, but in a sadistic way, and it, like, in an angry way, because, like, your natural instinct is to root for that family, and, I mean, they haven't done anything wrong.
No,
so
honestly.
It's literally a case of, like, this poor family being terrorized.
Besides being, like, white people.
Exactly.
Obnoxious white
obnoxious white people.
Yeah.
But it's, Yeah, so they're both like they're so innocent with like the way they present themselves that it's fun to watch them, but you're really mad at them. Like I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like they're very good at being villains.
They are
in a very unique way.
It was really like just even like the little hints, like when the dog was like barking at them the whole time. Like I thought that was really cool because like it gave you like this unnerving. You're like, I don't know about these guys. You're like, they're kind of weird.
Yeah.
You're like, even though like they haven't really said anything or like they haven't been weird. Like they weren't rude.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't honestly, they weren't rude until like the tension started to escalate. Then they just started to gaslight the shit out of Naomi Watts. Like, and it's like that's how I started also calling like the incidents by games, because that's what like they call them games. So like it's kind of hard to not like get caught up in that.
Right.
And I think like one of the most masterful games in that was like the undressing game, because it was just like a multi-level like complete mind like dominating and like manipulation tactic. Like when the husband actually like looked over her and was like, take off your clothes, I'm like, you're a bitch. I'm like, if my boyfriend would do that, I'm like, I'd punch him in the throat. I'm like, I'll take the shotgun now.
But it's just it's so it's painful, but in the best possible way.
Yeah, like this concept of just like saving face. Because, like, there was a moment where, like, those people, like, her friends or whatever, like, pulled up on the boat. And she was like, yeah, this is Paul, our friend.
We're fine. Yeah.
We're fine. We'll see you later. You want to do drinks? He hurt his knee. Like, just this concept of just trying to save face so hard. Like, because he said to her, he's like, you have the same idea as I. Like, he's like, we're on the same level, right? Like, what you're going to do. So he knew she was going to, like, it's very, like, interesting, like, this concept of, like, it's not even, like, a keeping up with the Joneses thing. It's, like, trying to be, like, everything's fine.
Yeah. Beyond, like, hey, we're being held captive, and more like, oh, no, this couldn't happen to our family.
Yeah.
Like, almost like an embarrassment.
Like, it's not like, oh, like, my husband's cheating on me. It's like, oh, it's like we're being held captive. Like, it's a whole different playing field of, like, not wanting people to know what's happening.
But I guess, we kind of drifted away for a little bit from what I was at with the remote. Cause
the remote.
I'll admit, when I was on board with them breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
And I was rooting for the family the whole time. And
Were you?
Yeah. But even though I loved them, like, I was thoroughly expecting, because I watched the American one first, and then I went back and watched the Austrian one when I found out it was like a 1-to-1, and I wanted to see what the differences were.
Yeah.
So the first time I watched it, I didn't know what to expect. So I, up until that point, was thinking this is going to be a thing where it's like, okay, they've been through all this shit, they're finally going to come through, and this is going to be the moment where, like, they turn things around.
Yeah.
And then, so they're playing the game where she has to say, the point is, like, she has to, like, recite a prayer or something,
and then backwards,
and if she can do it successfully, she gets to pick what tool they use to kill her husband, but instead she just grabs the shotgun and kills one of them.
Yeah.
And then the one who's been breaking the fourth wall the whole time pushes her to the side, grabs a remote control, and literally rewinds the movie.
And it's cool how they do, because he, like, it's not like he's, like, walking around like, his first, like, knee jerk is, like, where's the remote?
Yeah.
Where's the remote? Like, he's just asking. It was such a strange, there's another strange thing that stuck out to me, but that was very, it was odd. Like, even though I knew that scene happened, just, like, I thought it was going to happen earlier, actually, too, because I knew that scene was going to happen. I thought it was going to happen right, instead of the little boy dying. I thought that scene was going to happen there. It surprised me when they killed the kid. I was glad they went for it, though, personally.
Yeah. It's definitely, because I think in a movie like this, the more often than not, any other director would have it be like the dad makes a heroic sacrifice, and then the mom and the kid walk, like The Purge or something like that. So I think the fact that the kid is the first victim was a very smart choice, because it flips your ability to predict on its head, and it forces you in like that, like, uncharted territory. But on top of that, too, it's like it just drives home the point of, like, how sadistic they are. Like that scene with when the kid runs away and he's in the other house and he finds the gun and he's like, go ahead, pull it, Timmy.
That was really good.
And he pulls it and then nothing happens. He goes,
his face, that little boy, you see the face crack of the century.
Oh my God, it's so.
He was great. So brave, and then he pulled it.
You're right. It's oh my God. I feel like on some level it's like so bad that we're laughing about this, but like it is so. It is so perfect.
It's hard not. There's so much chemistry and like charisma to it. It's really hard. Like I even had a few favorite. There's one quip where he's like, "Don't ruin the carpet," and then when he's like, before that, like when the scene happens, like while the kid's being killed, because they don't show it on screen, which I think is a very good choice. Mm-hmm. I think it keeps the integrity of this film and what he was getting at, strangely. Mm-hmm. But he's like in the kitchen. He's like, "Does anybody want anything?" Like while they're all tied up, and like he's hearing like people screaming, and like he already heard the gunshot go off, and he's like slowly moseys his way like back in. And he's like, "What did you do?"
Or he's like, "You're not supposed. You counted wrong." Or I forget what the rules of the game were. It was like you didn't count the right way. You're supposed to go 3, 2, 1 and then do it, not 3, 2 and then do it on one. Like it's
just silly. Like,
yeah, it's silly in like such an evil way. They keep on saying it's silly and sadistic in the best possible way, but. Yeah, I get again to get back to the remote. I keep on taking us away from that. The first time I watched it, I was not a fan of that. Because I wanted it to be that movie where it's like, okay, we've made a point, and now let's have like the payoff where this family gets away. Yeah. And I was really almost uncomfortably mad at the movie at the end of it. I was like, oh, that's a terrible movie. Why would they do it? Like, I was really upset. But then the more I thought of it, I was like, no, that's the best possible way that they could have done it. Mm-hmm. Like, it gives you that, because his whole thing is like, we're gonna give you, we're giving you hope, but we keep on consistently taking it away. Yeah. And it's like that just drives home the point of like, you can hope all you want, but like. There's literally, it's like you said, they're gonna die. There's no way around it. Like, and it just drives that point home of like, there's nothing you can do to stop these guys. No, it's
very jarring. I'm not gonna lie.
It's inevitable.
Yeah, it's a very jarring scene, and I could see why it would turn people off. I'm unsure how I feel about it I don't think I would personally like wrote it in like that, but I can see. I think it's a bit on the nose, but I can see why he does it too, because he does get a bit more like ambiguous. Like Naomi Watts' death is so anticlimactic. I thought it was. I was like, I snorted a bit, and I was like, oh. It's just literally like they were just like.
Because even up to that point, like I still think like
I thought she was gonna live. Yeah, I did.
There's like the one last glimmer of like, is she gonna get like the fishing knife and cut herself loose? Yeah, and then, no.
Or I thought maybe even like one of the boys would fall out, like something, because they're like, oh, it's really slippery, and like you see the knife, and
And it's just like, what did he even say? It's like, she still had an hour before the bet was over. He's like, well, I'm hungry. We should have just wrapped this up. But like. It's just, and then ending it like you said with like they go to the next house and they're like, hey, we're staying over at the what's his faces, and they're out of eggs.
We met together.
Oh my God, it's just and then when he looks right in the camera and we go to credits, it's such a powerful movie, and but like I said, frustrating in the best way. Like, but it goes out of your way to make you mad, but. Then when you've had your chance to like cool down, you can like really look at it for what it is and what it's trying to say and appreciate it. I find.
No, I really think it's overall it's a very well polished movie, but the themes of it like is very what stands out to me, like this whole does fictional violence cause actual violence sort of like correlation, causation, like. Because they do have, like, after they push her in, they kind of, like, have this little, like, philosophical moment, which I think is interesting when they're like, oh, but if you see it on a movie, is it real? But they're like, yeah, because you're seeing pictures to it, and they're, like, sort of, like, not really debating, but just sort of, like, commentating on, like, seeing violence and, like, how real is it, like... compare, like, you put, like, stories of serial killers up, like, people love serial killer documentaries, but then, like, you put the same kind of violence in a movie and some people get upset. Like,
exactly.
It's sort of
like how many people were ranting and raving about the Ted Bundy tapes, but yet they can't do Saw.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's, and I mean, like, one is, like, Saw is very, like, over the top and
I don't know. I've seen a lot of stuff, so that Saw's a bit more, like, it's a bit playful, I think. Like, it tries to, it's like, it tries to be torture porn, but, like, it tries to mask itself not as torture porn.
Yeah, but, like, you get what I mean, where it's, like, it's very, the gore in that is very in your face, and, like, so it's interesting how, like you said, it's how people, like, if it's one thing to, like, see someone cutting his foot off to get out of a chain and having, like, the blood go everywhere.
Yeah.
But and people are not okay with that. But yet they're okay with, like, hearing, oh, yeah, Ted Bundy, this one night he broke in and beat this girl to death and then raped her body. Like,
or, like, here's this school shoot, like, the Columbine thing, like, especially, like, I thought it was too late later, like, very long after, but I think it sort of, like, still had that, I think that was still in the air, you know what I mean? It was very still fresh in the media, and weirdly enough, like, that sort of changed how we look at that sort of stuff, and I think that film, like, really talked about, like, does watching violence make us violent?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think it drove home the point that, like, you can't predict violence.
Yeah.
Like, there's no like, science to it. Like, yeah, we have profilers, yeah, we have law enforcement, yeah, we have, like, just our own wits about us, but, like, at the end of the day, people are gonna do what they're gonna do.
Right.
And you could see that because it's a cycle. Like, that's what I thought, it was so ingenious at the end of the movie.
That
like,
they're literally just going house to house, down the block.
Because, like, at first you don't realize it. Like I said, like, the first incident being like, oh, my friends are acting weird. Like, I was like, oh, that's an odd choice to start off on. And then I realized it was so smart, because then you realized they did it. They were, like, the second like, that's what I mean. Something, a whole different scene. Like, you could only imagine what happened to that family, and then you know what happened. And now it keeps on, like, that whole imagination. Mm-hmm.
It's just fun. Yeah, it's a wonderful movie, and if you can get past the whole it going out of its way to make you mad, it's definitely worth the watch.
It's a ride.
It's hard, like you said, it's hard to find a copy of it, but if you can, then
more power to you.
More power to you. It's an experience that if you can stick with it, you should definitely have. So. Yeah. I guess that brings us to the end of the Watchlist Podcast. Emi, thank you so much for coming out and doing this. Love to have you on again sometime.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Talk about more B movies or maybe some animation like you suggested.
We'll just be weebs and just talk about anime.
We'll see what happens. So, thank you guys for watching the Watchlist Podcast. If you want to be in on the conversation for next episode, we're going to have on yet another Kutztown friend of mine, Josh Fleisher.
Oh, I didn't know he's still in town.
No, he's in Philly now, but he's gonna make a special trip to come out for this. He actually we'll talk about this more, but he did a Super Bowl commercial, like camera work and like locations and all that. We'll talk more about that on that episode. So for the movies, if you guys want to be in on the conversation for that episode, he recommended me Salt Lake City Punk, which I don't remember who directed that, but it's like an indie.
Sounds cool.
It's an indie movie from like '98, I think. It has Matthew Lillard in it, so
I love Matthew Lillard. Now I'm gonna go home and watch this.
Well, yeah. So yeah, be like Emi. Be in on the conversation for next time. And then I recommended him. I want to say it's 2008. Nicholas Winding Refn's movie Bronson, starring Tom Hardy, about the Britain's most violent prisoner, Charlie Bronson. So. Check those movies out if you haven't seen them. Again, Emi, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching the Watchlist Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Bye.